Mother Nature can be ruthless. The United States is no newcomer to devastating natural disasters, from the swirling hurricanes of the Gulf Coast to the trailer-tossing winds of Tornado Alley to the ground-pounding quakes of California. Here are the top 10 worst natural disasters in history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more videos. Number 10. The Great Galveston Storm of 1900. Galveston, Texas, is situated on a small Gulf of Mexico barrier island with a peak elevation of 8.7 feet above sea level. Galveston was a jewel of Texas in 1900, its largest port town, home to millionaire mansions, and summoned the first electric streetlights in the country. When an unidentified hurricane carrying 140 miles per hour winds smashed into the Gulf Coast, creating a 16-foot storm surge that almost wiped the island and its 37,000 inhabitants off the map. In the tornado, the single deadliest in U.S. history, an estimated 6,000 to 8,000 people died. Trolley trucks torn from their moorings and crashed through structures like sledgehammers. A grand piano riding the crest of a 6-foot wave down Broadway, and an unrelenting wind that survivors describe as 1,000 little devils screaming and whistling were among the harrowing descriptions of the Galveston hurricane. Number 9. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake and fire. The residents of San Francisco were startled by a jolt at 5:12 a.m. on April 18, 1906. Before the actual shaking started, they had just enough time to get their bearings. A 7.9 magnitude earthquake that ripped a 296-mile fissure along the San Andreas Fault shook the Northern California city of 450,000 for nearly a minute. But the earthquake was just the beginning of the nightmare, leveling countless buildings and houses. Throughout the area, hundreds of fires were burned by broken gas lines, and firefighters were only able to watch helplessly, their water supply drained by ruptured pipes. For 3 days, the fires burned, destroying nearly 500 city blocks. City officials reported that more than 3,000 people were killed in the earthquake and the subsequent fires. When the smoke eventually cleared, more than 28,000 buildings were demolished, and more than 200,000 San Franciscans were left homeless, forced to sleep for months in improvised cottages in the city's parks as the city was rebuilt from the ashes. Number 8. The Johnstown flood. Tsunamis are not expected to reach central Pennsylvania, but that's exactly what it looked like when the Appalachian town of Johnstown in 1889 was struck by a 40-foot high, half-mile wide wall of water and debris. 1,600 homes were demolished and swept away in minutes, and 2,209 persons, including 99 entire families, were killed. The cause of the Johnstown flood was the dam's inability to retain 20 million tons of water stored in Lake Conymal, a man-made reservoir in the mountains 14 miles from Johnstown. The South Fork Hunting and Fishing Society, which included the wealthy industrialist Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick as members, owned the lake and dam. To protect the fish population, the club sealed off the dam's drainage pipes and allowed the lake to fill up dangerously high with spring rains. The huge surge of water ripped down the mountainside when the dam collapsed on May 31st, picking up trees and large boulders as the wave gathered horrific speed and intensity. Number 7. The Peshtigo Fire. The Peshtigo Fire was responsible for the deaths of an estimated 2,500 people, more than any other fire in American history, burning 1.5 million acres of tinder dry land on October 8, 1871. A series of wildfires, including the huge one that was thought to have started near the small town of Peshtigo, Wisconsin, were caused by drought conditions in the upper Midwest. The flames were fanned by high winds into firestorms that were able to jump across natural fire breaks and even large bodies of water. When Peshtigo residents heard the approaching inferno, many fled to the water, where they thought the flames could not reach them. It was reported to rumble like a freight train. They were boiled to death by a party that took shelter in a water tower. Some fathers decided to kill themselves and their children before the fire could reach them, unable to bring the families to safety. The firestorm was so hot that the sand on the streets of Peshtigo turned into glass. Make sure to stay until the end of the video, because these next disasters could have happened in your city. Number 6. Hurricane Maria. America has a tradition of violent hurricanes that had been long and tragic. The devastation of the 1900 Great Galveston Storm is unprecedented, but there is also the 1928 Okeechobee Hurricane that took 2,500 lives in Florida, and the 1893 Sea Island Storm in coastal Georgia and South Carolina that submerged 2,000 people. But passing all those as one of the worst ever, Hurricane Maria, which tore through Puerto Rico on September 20th, 2017. The Category 4 storm's official death tolls is 64 people, but the seeds of destruction and stories from local hospitals suggest a much greater toll. Investigators from Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Health found that the death rate in Puerto Rico during the months directly following Hurricane Maria was 62 points greater than the same period a year ago. By surveying 3,299 individual households across every foot of the island, those excess deaths totaled 4,645 individuals, making Maria the second deadliest hurricane in the history of the United States, taking more lives in America than 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina combined. Number 5. 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake. An undersea earthquake with a magnitude of 9.3 shook the Indian Ocean on 26 December 2005, just west of the northern coast of Sumatra. It is thought that the major quake was caused by a rift of both the Burma and Indian tectonic plates along the fault. A sequence of tsunami waves reaching heights of 100 feet was sent barreling towards the coastlines bordering the Indian Ocean due to their size, with Indonesia, India, Thailand, and Sri Lanka being the areas most affected, with dire results. The earthquake was the third largest ever reported in history, lasting a whopping 8 to 9 minutes, as waves moving at roughly 310 to 620 miles per hour hammered local coastlines within hours, and in some areas, only a matter of minutes. As far away as Struis Bay, South Africa, almost 5,300 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake. In total, the large waves killed 227,898 people, with Indonesia suffering the greatest number of casualties. The international community's rapid humanitarian relief is credited with saving countless lives during the catastrophe, as the tsunami directly affected about 1.7 million people. Number 4. 1970 Bowler Cyclone. A strong cyclone made landfall along the coast of East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, on 12 November 1970, causing major damage to the poorly prepared area. The storm delivered a 33-foot-high storm surge that ravaged local communities, achieving sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. The storm directly affected approximately 3.6 million people, with almost 85% of all homes and buildings damaged along the coast. It is estimated that the strong cyclone killed nearly 500,000 individuals, including 46,000 fishermen. In the following weeks, landslides, floods, and torrential rain also killed countless crops and livestock in both India and Pakistan. The government of Pakistan was slow to respond to the crisis, rendering the situation on the ground very difficult for the survivors of the area in the days and weeks that followed. Due to political indifference to the crisis, the Pakistani government deliberately delayed multiple supply drops and convoys loaded with medical supplies, food, and water. The 1970 Bowler cyclone is considered to be the deadliest tropical cyclone on record to date, costing an estimated $86.4 million in damage. Number 3. 1887 Yellow River flood. Torrential rains accumulated in one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history in September 1887, as China's Yellow River flooded its bank and flooded North China's approximate 50,000 square miles. Scholars attributed the tragedy to farmers living along the river, who built intricate dikes over a period of many centuries to keep the Yellow River from flooding naturally each year. Water levels naturally increased as a result of decades of silt accumulated in the bottom of the river due to its failure to flood outwards, swelling the Yellow River to unimaginable heights in the years that followed. In September 1887, as heavy rain set in for several days, dikes near Zhengzhou City, Henan Province, were no longer able to keep the water at bay, enabling the river to flood uncontrollably across the low-lying plains that surrounded it. As additional dikes broke, within minutes, entire regions were swamped with flood water. Almost 2 million Chinese were left homeless as the water gradually receded weeks later, while the catastrophic flood destroyed nearly 900,000 others. Number 2. 1556 Shanxi earthquake. China's Ming Dynasty experienced the most strong earthquake in human history across its Shanxi province on the morning of 23 January 1556. The earthquake, which according to modern estimates is estimated to have been an 8.0 magnitude quake, impacted an area of 840 kilometers and involved 97 separate counties in China. At this time, with many of the populations of Shanxi living in yaodongs, artificial caves built into cliffs, the quake was especially devastating because many of these caves simply collapsed, killing thousands in their homes. Imperial documents from the period show that over 60% of the population of the country was killed by the quake in many regions. Overall, official records show that more than 830,000 Chinese people lost their lives as a result of the catastrophe, as countless landslides, floods from blocked waterways, and aftershocks, which lasted for half a year, wreaked havoc on the region. Number 1. Central China flood of 1931. In 1931, when floods from the Yellow, Yangtze, Pearl, and Huai rivers inundated most of central China suffered the worst natural disaster in human history. The tragedy was the product of multiple variables that occurred over the span of several months. Through the spring, summer, and autumn, melting ice and snow from China's mountains, combined with heavy rains, pushed each of China's major rivers beyond their banks, resulting in a flood zone that covered a region roughly the size of England and half of Scotland combined. At its height, researchers estimated that the flooding directly impacted as many as 53 million people, with an estimated death toll of 3.7 million people. The Great Flood was also responsible for destroying vast swaths of farmland and housing, in addition to the immense human toll. Because of the extreme flooding, diseases such as measles, cholera, malaria, schistosomiasis, and dysentery also spread rapidly, as sanitation started to break down systematically throughout the area due to overcrowding and the displacement of millions. The Central China flood of 1931 continues to be the world's worst and deadliest natural disasters in history as of 2019, with total damage caused difficult to quantify because of the enormous devastation involved. Well, that wraps up today's video. These natural disasters not only killed thousands of people, but they also costed each country over $20 million to clean up and repair all the aftermath. These are the top 10 worst natural disasters in history. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more videos.